Hollywood panel. We've got several here that have came in from Los Angeles, and they're here. They're actually making a movie while the conference is going on, so we should see some of that later, I guess, tomorrow, correct? We're looking at that. I'll start off here. Robert Anthony Peters. Robert, we have two veteran actors here on each side. Robert's done several things. You want to tell a little bit about some of the things you've done?
Yeah, the more notable ones would have been The Pursuit of Happiness and Steve Jobs, small roles in both of those, and a whole bunch of other things, that never will see the light of day.
And we're going to talk about that. And I have Scott here on my left. This is really an honor for me. Scott and I were actually in an acting school, 14 years ago, 15 years ago maybe? It's been a while.
I was 8. I was 8.
He was a child prodigy. I was just an old guy. So we had some history, and Scott has, and I know he's worked his way through and really has a lot going on right now. He's getting ready to show his movie Mully tonight, and real excited to see that. And he's got what? You got 4 films coming out here in the next month?
Yeah.
Wow. So I'll let Scott talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Is this thing on? Hello. Okay, so I'll just act like I'm Jay-Z on this thing. So I'm glad y'all are here. It's exciting to be here at the Nexus conference. It's a pleasure to be here. Jonathan and I did go to acting school, the Stella Adler Conservatory in Los Angeles. So, is there a way to turn this one on? Y'all hear me good out there? Oh, you're good? Okay, cool.
What?
Yeah. This one's better? Yeah, we'll just use this one. Okay. So, yeah, it's an exciting time for me. When I got the call to possibly come out here and do something, I do have 3 movies coming out, and I'm extremely passionate about all of them, and I'll touch on them quickly. One is Mully. It's a film I'm going to screen tomorrow night for the last time before it comes out. No, tonight, sorry. We're screening Matthew Smiley, a director, actor, artist. We'll introduce him in a second. His movie is tomorrow night, but Mully's is tonight, and it's a movie that I directed in Kenya. It's a story that was brought to me by a man who started Med Assets. He's taken 5 companies public. He's become my friend, and one of them was Med Assets, was his last company. It deals with in the medical field. And he approached me with the project 4 years ago, and over the 4 years, we've cultivated a film campaign and a movement to support the film. And what this man is doing in Kenya, he started out, I'll give you a quick rundown, as a brief intro to the film. He was an orphan himself, and he worked extremely hard, and he became a self-made multi-millionaire in Kenya. And one day and I don't want to spoil the movie for you, but something happened, and he felt called by God to change his life instantly. I'm going to cut through a lot of stuff to what's happened, and he now has 13,000 children he's rescued in the world. He's created a self-sustaining system that if it's replicated across Africa, it can literally change the continent. I just went back over there to film some content, because I'm actually in charge of the film campaign as well. There's a man named Paul Blavin who bought the film, and it's a company called For Good, and I partnered with them to help their strategy on having the most impact for good in this country, so this movie will spread across the world, and we can learn from what Charles is doing, from the environment to rehabilitation of children to dealing with from everything, from child prostitution to things that he battles. It's a movie that I think will inspire and change the world, and it's a blessing. We're coming out in 1,000 theaters in less than 2 weeks. If you go to mullymovie.com, you type in a zip code, you can probably find a theater within 50 miles of you in America. So, and the man behind it are John Bardis and Paul Blavin, and they are completely dedicated to changing the world. The next one is a movie, Only the Brave. If anybody knows about the story about the 19 firefighters who perished in the Yarnell Hill fire in 2013. You were there in Prescott? Yeah. Yeah, well, it's a movie that means a lot to us guys who played. I'm an actor in it. Yeah, that comes out everywhere across America, October 20th. I play a guy named Clayton Whitted. He was the pastor, and he was a squad boss on the team. But it's an amazing cast, all the way from Josh Brolin, Miles Teller, myself, Jeff Bridges, Andy McDowell, Jennifer Connelly, Taylor Kitsch, Jeff Stoltz. It just goes on and on. It was a really great honor making that movie, to honor and expose our country to what the elite firefighters are. They go out and save our towns, that save lives. And we really haven't seen that in cinema. And that movie's coming out. And then the next one is a DreamWorks Steven Spielberg kind of Genesis project called Thank You for Your Service. It's a book that was written by David Finkel. Jason Hall, who wrote American Sniper, is his directorial debut. And that movie comes out a week later, on October 27th everywhere. And that movie is a movie that hopefully we can shine a light on what it means when somebody says thank you for your service to our soldiers, what that really entails. It's what they go through, and the battle is not necessarily the battle you fight on the battlefield, it's the battle when you come home. And how we can better take care of our soldiers when they do come home, our men and women who serve daily to protect our country, how we can do better to honor them. And it's an entertaining movie. And I play a guy named Adam Michael Emery, who was shot in the head in Iraq. And he had 2 inches of his frontal lobe removed. So it was a pretty intensive process for me to get ready for that film. But DreamWorks and Universal are behind that, and we're excited to put that out there. And hopefully all 3 of these films, Mully, Only the Brave, and Thank You for Your Service, there might not have been a better time where I feel like I've been fortunate enough and blessed to be on projects that can actually have some sort of impact in our world. I've robbed banks before in movies, and I love doing that. But these movies really have a purpose, and that's an exciting thing where we can give back. And that's enough about me. I'm just grateful to be here. I brought some of my most talented friends, and when I got asked by Jonathan, it was a blessing to be here. I'll start at that end. I'll let you, I'll do a brief intro on each of you from my perspective of why I think it's good that you're here, and then who you guys are. Nicholas Acosta is a genius filmmaker. He's my partner. He's on the director's chair for this thing we're going to present to you on Saturday. And there's no doubt that the movies we're going to screen are movies. I kind of have started the 120-hour film festival, and he's directed a film in every one of those film festivals. To break the system, to break the mold of Hollywood, kind of like in the spirit of what we're trying to do here, where you can get up and do it on your own and change the commentary of how things are supposed to be done. You can make a great movie in 5 days with talented people that know how to write, direct, produce, edit, score, and put a film out into the marketplace and entertain people that sometimes have a purpose. And Nick is a master of the horror genre, the suspense and thriller genre, and sci-fi. He's done amazing content, and it's an honor to have him here working alongside me and presenting his work. And I think he's going to be like the next Steven Spielberg. That's how talented he is. You want to...
Thanks.
All right, well, then I'll keep rolling.
No, it's great.
Yeah, and then I'll start with Lulu. Lulu is an actress, and she's acted in Only the Brave. She acted in the firefighter film. She played my wife, actually. Joseph Kaczynski did Oblivion and Tron. He's a great director. Well, I went up to him on set one day, and I said, I have an amazing actress for you. Lulu's actually my girlfriend as well. So we were out there together, and she looked exactly like the girl, and she did an amazing job, and she's acted in a couple movies with Nick we're going to screen. What are the titles, Nick?
Endgame and Angela.
Angela.
Including the one we're shooting right now.
And she's the star of the movie right now. And Trailer Park Shark just appeared on the Sci-Fi Channel, and she was the lead. And then Matt Smiley. Actually, Matt is a very multifaceted character. He's an artist. He's a filmmaker. He's a documentarian. He's an actor, too. Matthew has a lot going on, so I want to tell you kind of about the film he has going on. So I'm going to come back to Matthew. Blake used to be a film writer, and he wrote content. I did a movie called Child of God where he heard I was sleeping in a cave in Tennessee. It's a true story. I slept in a cave for 3 months, and I had to lose 50 pounds. And he broke the story, and he was living in Australia. And I'll let you finish the...
Yeah, I mean, I was writing for a film news website, and I got this exclusive that they were doing this adaptation of a Cormac McCarthy novel, and there was this guy living in a cave in Tennessee, and he was running around like crazy, and I was like, who is this person? And I was lucky enough to get the story and break that, and then many months after, when Scott got out of the cave and stopped doing what he was doing, he hit me up, and we became friends. I was at film school at the time. I came out to LA, made a film at the 120 Hour Film Festival, and now I came over to this country to work with Scott, and I work at his theater, and that's how I'm here.
Yeah, and just to go along the lines of like what it takes to make it or whatever that it means is I think passion and being connected with people and being genuine in who you are and having a passion and just doing your passion. Like there's some guys in the room that I've gotten to know over the past few weeks who are kind of the brain trust of Nexus and running this thing. And I think that it's pretty amazing to have, if you follow your passion, good things happen. And I think that that's what the energy of this crew is. And then Matthew's an eclectic guy. I want him to introduce his movie, which is playing tomorrow night as well.
Thank you, Scott. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I started off my career as an actor in Canada, and as I was progressing within my career as an actor, very quickly I realized that I definitely wanted to move more towards directing and artwork. Most notably, there was a film that I was preparing when I had found out about a story about the missing and murdered women in northern British Columbia in Canada. And my initial intentions after doing a lot of research was to do a fictionalized piece on the Highway of Tears, which is a strip of highway along Highway 16 in northern BC. And very quickly, after speaking to a lot of family members, because it was a very new topic with regards to missing and murdered women in Canada, because most people wouldn't think of women going missing or being murdered or cases not being investigated. So not a lot of people wanted to talk about it. Police didn't want to talk about it. So very quickly I realized that making a fiction piece was not an ethical thing to do. So I decided to push forward and basically put everything in and took a crew up and just started interviewing people up north. And if people have been up north or in more of the northern regions, a lot has to do with face-to-face interactions and building trust, and especially with regards to, obviously in Canada, it's First Nations as opposed to Native Americans. Here in the U.S., is moving that ball forward. So the documentary went on to kind of shed light. It wasn't just over 40 women off one particular highway in northern British Columbia, but it ended up being, by the time we screened, over 600 in Canada. And the film actually ended up screening on Parliament for Justin Trudeau and the rest of the Canadian government as he was taking office, and forced them to make a pledge to do a $40 million national inquiry into the missing and murdered women, which put a lot of pressure on the Royal Canadian Mounted Police to kind of change the way that they had previously conducted all these investigations. And as we've seen throughout, generations with generational poverty and systemic racism, that it's really helped bridge the gap. So now it's become part of their curriculum in terms of policing in Canada. And yeah, now with the numbers at over 4,000, it's built. But I think the internet and obviously pushing forward with regards to, if you have a camera, a laptop, and a will to tell a story, then you can do it. Now I'm sort of doing a similar thing within the art world. With little tricks that I've learned from artists that I've worked with, and yeah, looking forward to doing an art show here on Saturday, tomorrow. Tomorrow, cool.
I just want to interject here a little bit. So yeah, you talk about the will and the passion, and I think that's always the heart of everything. We're here though as a financial conference, and that's one thing that we talk about. How hard is it to make those movies financially? And what do you guys go through to get your funding for these? And you want to talk about your own private projects? How many of those private projects are sitting out there?
So I've mainly done a lot of short films right now. I'm getting into trying to work on my first feature and everything. But with all the shorts I've been doing, usually that's a situation where you have to put it together all by yourself. I've had people help me in the past, but usually it's in resources like, oh, I have a camera. Oh, I have sound equipment. Oh, I have a house you can use. So usually it's just kind of just piecing things together and finding people who are dedicated to the project. In my case, for the short film situation, recently a film I did with Lulu, Angela, that was a situation where I had to finance it completely by myself. And that's in most cases for some filmmakers in my position where you just have to out of pocket. And it was made only for $1,000, but and we actually made it for $300 under budget. I was proud of that. But but that's what it takes sometimes. Is like you're the only one at first who's going to finance your project if you don't have studios backing you right off the bat. So yeah, that's one way that you can finance your project is by yourself, or just finding people, like-minded individuals like Scott and Blake and everyone who's just like, I'm on board and I want to help with every aspect of it.
Robert, you've been doing this for a while. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I know for me, I've done, I did a lot of, I still do a fair bit of theater producing and directing. And, that's easier because you can usually get away with doing it inexpensively a lot better. But, when you find, it's great when you can find people whose interests converge with yours. So I run events where we host a panel or a lecture, and then we do a staged reading and have an audience participation discussion afterwards. So it's a way of hitting the ideas on every level, intellectually, emotionally, and people end up then engaging in it socially with each other. And I work in a lot of these with libertarian organizations. So, we find topics that are germane to things that they're interested in and that their audience would be interested in, and it serves them well. I just, last year, finished writing and directing my first short film, and I got a grant through an organization called Aspen Nexus, which it's not related to this Nexus conference, but a lot of relationships that are similar. A lot of people who would, cross over very well.
It's
That's an organization that especially people who are interested in filmmaking should check out, because they provided some good funding for my film Tank Man. So.
What was the name of it again?
Tank Man?
No,
Oh, Taliesin Nexus.
Talk a little bit about Tank Man so they know what you.
Yeah, sure.
I'd hope you'd bring it out to the little show we talked about.
I want to know just based off the title alone, man.
Yeah, no, this is my response to Tank Girl. I feel like it's, no, I'm kidding.
Oh,
But that would be,
Broke my heart.
Lori Petty and I, we've got a real big rivalry. Many of you may be familiar with the famous image of the gentleman who stood in front of the tank after the Tiananmen Square massacre. And so this is a speculative piece of what was his day like, why would somebody do that? A seemingly ordinary person, stand in front of a tank of one of the most powerful militaries in the world. So it starts with him in the morning from when he gets up till right before he gets there. So we're, thank you.
What kind of return you guys get when you're making these smaller movies? Like, what kind of return can you expect on those? Because the reason I'm asking is because what we want to incorporate is how do we help everyone with their art get the message out better and have smaller transactions where people can watch the movie for less in a direct payment. And then we also want to know, how we can help everybody get funding so that it doesn't all get in a centralized system. That's something we are real interested in helping build in Nexus.
You go ahead.
Okay. Excellent question, I think, because I think that's definitely a universal question that you hear all over the world from every single filmmaker or artist that's like, I want to do this piece, I want to shoot this film, I don't have any money, I got to go ask parents, relatives, anybody on the street. I think the internet as a disruptors, there's so much stuff. Like obviously crowdfunding sites have started to be much more popular. And I think there's also the new wave that's the investors, the people putting in, like when you think of Kickstarter, is that now people are wanting to see a return, because I think sometimes if they believe in a filmmaker, like if I think of Scott or Blake or any of the gentlemen on here or Lulu are making a film, I'm like, okay, I want to invest in them. So I think definitely there does need to be a lot more work on the platform, because I know I started my producing career, not directing career, with Ashton Kutcher when YouTube was really starting, and they were starting the curated channels like with Catalyst. But I guess the problem is if the company gets $1 million and then you as a filmmaker come in, they're like, great, we just got $1 million, but we're going to give you 5,000 to go shoot something that should be 30. So I think there still needs to be a little bit more of an open market for filmmakers to be very transparent, because I think transparency, the internet definitely opens that transparency, to allow them and also demystify the process. Because a lot of people, I don't know anything really about cryptocurrency, but I'm curious about it. And I think people that are in cryptocurrency are also probably very curious how the filmmaking works. Like, how do you go about and shoot a movie in 120 hours? It sounds insane. But also building a website or web platforms the same way. So I think the best thing would be to develop something where you see the budgets, where you get those updates. And we're getting closer to that. And I think people feel much more invested. And then the filmmakers won't feel like they're losing.
So to add the cryptocurrency side a little bit, what you can do with blockchain is you can have you can have a decentralized YouTube that would monetize for artists better. That's one thing. That's like a no-brainer. The other thing that we've talked about with the music industry, a challenge in it is content discovery. And I'm guessing it's the same thing. Like these documentaries, I would be interested in seeing these, but it's going to be hard for me to discover that, right? But so you take this analogy of like a college kid out there who's like, oh, I got, no money, but I got all the time in the world, and they'll scour all this stuff and like curate it. And so we're thinking about ways where you could monetize that service that they provide for everybody. And so you could imagine like a decentralized army of people who watch everything and then really give it the ratings. And so there could be two instances.
It's almost like
Reddit, like content. Reddit. Yeah, kind of like Reddit, but like decentralized. So like no moderators can like squash certain things down that they don't like. That's a problem with YouTube as well and Reddit. Like if the subject is too hot, they'll sink it, and we know.
Oh, yeah. For sure. Or even look no further than Rotten Tomatoes. Some movies get way better ratings right out of the gate just because of what studio it is. It's no coincidence. So you get a lot of that.
Right. So I just want to add that.
So yeah, our whole interest, a lot of it is to bring, the arts to everyone in a better way. And so we're trying to figure out how and what your challenges are so that we can understand how to help with that better.
So then we'll put Colin's brain on building a system, just like Matrix, and then we'll be okay. And then you're gonna go, that Colin guy.
I feel like when it comes to the business aspect, especially when it comes to like, just how do I say this? Right down to everything. Like filmmaking is about just telling amazing stories, and everyone wants to be entertained, and you can tell great stories, things that could change the world, or things that just kind of touch on ideas. Whether it be, Tank Man or all these films like Mully and such. Or even like a film like Angela, where it touches on a subject matter that is now kind of being a little bit more accepted, but probably wasn't many years ago. And but at the same time, entertainment is key because people want to be entertained. So if you put content out there, people will find ways to see it, and they'll want to see it. Like I want to see Tank Man. I want to see it just based off what he just told me. I want to see it. So that's fine.
Yeah, and it sounds like you guys may be able to contribute more than I can on this, but I'm fascinated by the idea of like the ICOs associated with specific films. I'm a bit more familiar with Tatiana Moroz has an artist coin, and I guess there are similar versions where people are creating them for their film, basically to help fund them and get them off the ground. And then you have that whole buy-in where people are kind of invested in promoting and encouraging the enjoyment of the film or the viewership of it, because then their investment they'll reap a reward. So
yeah, the one thing that's challenging with that, I can't wrap my mind around the business model of it yet, because like the coin, the tokens are more of like a money system. So But yeah, we need to move it forward into like this future of digital assets, right? So you can imagine like companies or debt being traded on exchanges as well. Well, that's already happening. But they're kind of like an ongoing concern that keeps going. I guess a movie is kind of like that. You know, doing an ICO for every little thing and creating so many like different blockchains doesn't seem exactly like the right solution, but there's got to be financing mechanisms and ways to like build it into this that would work, that would really nail the business model home, you know, like, and I think a lot of it too is like just getting the information out there to enough people, like in the same way Kickstarter gets these projects out to people. You could do similar things like that for sure with contracting systems. And this is just the man we need to talk about this.
Sorry. I think we missed a lot.
But it's opening up new financing mechanisms for the arts, like definitely. It's a huge thing. We need to find financing mechanisms for everything. We can create these with this new technology.
And also the aspect of that is it's so decentralized too. So you can have a buy-in from smaller parties, and it also enables the artist or the production to, you know, one might say, keep more integrity as the more decentralized it is, the less leverage they will have on the end product. I mean, a certain amount, because people will stop investing in you, right? If you're going to produce poor project after poor project. But
yeah, and what you could imagine is that your reputation as an artist would precede yourself, and then therefore you would start out smaller, much lower risk, and then as you got bigger and did more things, you could imagine more and more people who would be willing to invest in it. So then free market economics just dictates how the financing goes. So if you're better, it's like a meritocracy. The better you are, you know, the more financing you get. I mean, that's how I see that going down.
I did want to bring this in, Scott, just on. We're talking about a couple things, and these are all very interesting. One thing that's a challenge with anything is the mass amount of content that's out there. And that when you get into the things with studio movies, and having some background in this myself, you realize what a business model that is. There's so many components to a studio movie. It's its own, I mean, you look at the credits at the end of the movie. So you see how many things are affected. When I went to Los Angeles, and you might remember this, there's a Hollywood directory you get. And so it was almost like it replicated reality. You're looking, if you want to get animals in your movies, well, there's a whole, subdirectory of all these different types of animals, or people who train them. All the different construction, set design, amazing how many things that movies replicate as an industry. So one of the challenges of talking about all this, these are good ideas. On the scale, though, that's why movie studios are so successful, is because they can operate on such a big scale. And that's, I think, the one challenge that, as we talk about this, you guys are obviously, and Scott, you could probably talk about this a little bit, about being in the studio system. I mean, when you're in there, you get in a machine that has advertising. They've got everything down on every level. And when you get in this, you realize how powerful that is. How does it get to be something you replicate as an independent?
I'm a big fan of the studio system. Because of the way it's headed, I think that there's a lot of smart people that I've been fortunate enough to. I did a movie with Jeff Nichols, which Warner Brothers put out. I think Jeff Nichols is one of our American great directors up and coming. And I think Warner Brothers got behind him. I think that Sony came alongside Only the Brave. And what Sony got behind that with their passion and Black Label Media, there's an insanely intellectual people running that who are passionately driven to tell stories that matter. DreamWorks and Steven Spielberg, I stand by, it's an honor and blessing to be working with them on stories that matter with them. And what I've noticed is that what people at these studios are doing is collaborating with always the best idea in the room. And it is harder for independent filmmakers to break through. I've done tons of independent films, and I've done a handful of studio films now, so I've kind of been in both worlds. But I think that there is a way to shape, and I'm going to go back to what I said. I'm here because I believe I'm screening my movie for you guys, and I believe in the passionate people that we can do good in the world and connect people. And I think there is a model to do that, collaborating with everybody who does do this model right now. That's kind of where I'm at with that.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's looking to like take down systems. We're just trying to look at giving options for helping others as well.
Enabling
yeah.
more people
There's
to
a
do
ton
more
of
options.
people that are just excluded from the system, they can't participate because of the studios and, you know.
But I don't
It's
even know
great
if it
that you're
is,
in it, but.
I don't know if it is because of the studios, right? I don't think that the studios are forcing the little guys out. I don't think that's the case at all. So I don't think,
No, it's just
that's
the
not
little-
anybody's goal. It's just trickier to get into that system.
I'm gonna talk about this a little. I'm gonna take off the role of moderator and talk a little personal. So Scott and I were in a class, or we did classes together at Stella Adler. And after that, I went back and I wanted to do my own thing, you know, do my own movies. Made a movie back in Iowa where I was from. Iowa then got right after I did that, Iowa came up with the best film tax credits in the country. And if anybody knows about the film tax credit system that's gone around, New Mexico, Louisiana, Michigan, there's several of them that became their deal. You know, they came up with these tax credits. And all of a sudden, filmmakers started going out of Hollywood and going to those places and making movies. And that's what's, I think when you're talking about the studios looking for the best ideas, you saw it right there. The studios, I'm in Iowa, so when it came to Iowa, they did 50% tax credits. Everyone else was 25 and 30. Iowa was doing 50% tax credits, and all these studios start coming to Iowa. So you're looking, you know, here you are in Iowa, and pretty soon you're seeing the Ashton Kutchers and, you know, the different ones walking around in these small towns in Iowa. 50 films, there's 49 films made in 2009 in Iowa. Okay, I mean, so Iowa went to become also this hotbed of major industries moving in there. So now I can speak about this because this happened for myself. I saw all this. I have a background in taxes. So what did I do? I wanted to make films. I did taxes. So what I did is I put together a system. I ended up doing 12 different projects. It was a cumulative $80 million. Got $40 million in tax credits. It was the most ever given in the country. Got all those together, got crews of people together to start filming these with 5 feature films, 4 documentaries, 3 television series. It was all going to work. I had studios that wanted to get involved. I had Chamber of Commerces around Iowa wanting to do studio systems. And then this is the challenge, and this is where I think there's a place here for the cryptocurrency decentralized system. What was happening were studios were basically partnering with governments. So governments were giving these incentives, these tax credits, and it still happens, obviously, today. It's happening in Iowa. Iowa pulled them. There were several of the studios that came to Iowa and just started all these shell companies. So when you see those credits on the back, they created all the companies, so all the money that they were spending were going basically back to them. Yeah, it was a brilliant idea, good business plan. Well, then Iowa pulled them. I can't remember the number, but I think it was 117 productions were out there when they pulled it. So all these jobs, all these different productions were happening in Iowa. They pulled the credits. They all left. So I'm sitting there with, you know, myself and a whole team of people, all these credits. I had to work. I was a native, so I actually had to work with the Attorney General to get them restored. Then they changed the rules. They would only give 25% at a time. The whole banking line of credit we had dried up because that was no longer looked at as collateral. And yeah, the movies never got made. And I tell you, it's hard because I haven't really picked up a camera since. And I spent years doing that. And we have some great movies that are sitting on computers because of that. So that's the challenge I know personally from when you're out there following your passion and you get in the system and try to finance it and you try to work with it. So that's the challenge. I think leading back to studios, I think studios will partner with the decentralized independent people using different types of financing mechanisms as opposed to what we now have the governments. So yeah, and if anyone would like to talk about that.
Well, I want to like briefly go on. Like it's also in my case, it's like I want to be a part of the system. I'm technically in the system, but not fully in there yet. Mainly because, you know, I'm almost 30, but you know, I look 20. I look like I'm in my early 20s, and what happens is it's hard for studios to want to give someone like who looks young like a couple $100 million or whatever million, even like $1 million just to make a movie sometimes. And it really takes just people believing in your content and me having to work twice as hard to show like, look, I can do this. I'm as professional as these people. I know what I'm doing. And also, like the funniest thing is like I'm trying to make my feature, And they're like, okay, well, have you made a feature before? No, I'm trying to make a feature. Oh, you have to make a feature in order to make your first feature. I'm like, okay. But again, that just makes me work twice as hard. But you know, it's like that, trying to get part of the system. I believe in the system, but it just, and you have to have people believe in you. So you have to work twice as hard to get there.
The only thing that I wanted to add on to Nick's point was, you're right, studios aren't going to give $100 million to someone who hasn't made a film before. And studios are businesses, and a lot of the time, they would rather put up $100 million on a project that has comic book material or fans behind it for a chance to make $1 billion or $2 billion than get a young filmmaker and give him $20 million to make a film that might turn over 80, 100 million. So it's a business model as well, you know.
I wanted to bring up something since we're talking about financing. I mean, I think that there's gonna be some huge changes with that, mainly because of what's going to be an increasingly difficult opportunity to capture funds, capture audience money in the traditional way. I mean, you know, however you view piracy or copyright infringement, whatever your moral compass is on that or how you feel about it, that's the reality, and that's not changing. And I mean, I think, there are some interesting blockchain alternatives to enforcing that, but it doesn't seem to be, you know, that distribution not through the studio system where they're getting a return on it is just going to be happening. That's going to be a reality. And that's going to be increasingly so. And I don't know that, you know, they're going to be able to continue to make films at the same scale, at least not in the same way. They're going to have to capture even more money on the front end, or have it be more commercial or advertising driven or something.
One of the thoughts I had on this is that all of a sudden people's computers are going to be real important, and they're not going to be wanting to put corrupted files on their computer anymore, which could really help bring back, you know, the ability for people to pay for it again, because we can create smaller transactions associated with each viewing, right? So you can have direct viewings that cost less, and they're willing to pay that because they aren't willing to risk their bank account that lives on that same computer. Because you can easily send a corrupted movie that will help them hack your wallet. So I think it's a really great potential to bring, you know, to help all of your industries.
So, but then you're talking about a lower price point, right? Because it's going to be risk versus reward.
Well, it's a bigger audience at a smaller price.
Right,
Tiered
but
pricing for different things in a contract.
But see, that's the challenge, though. I mean, if you want people to go with that, you know, if they're more safety-minded, you know, it depends on how concerned they are. But most people are not going to be that concerned. They're going to want to pay 99 cents, right? Something like that, $1 for a movie. And which means you've got to sell a lot of copies of that, which means you have to appeal to a larger market. And so then you've got problems for the more artistic, you know, more, maybe more thoughtful pieces. You're gonna have a lot of things where they're exploding because you've got to sell that to the entire world, right? Everybody in India and Italy and wherever else are gonna wanna see it. And that's what translates. I mean, that's what we see now to a certain extent. But if that's the vision of the future, it's gonna be even more of that. And so we're gonna have less, one might say, thoughtful films.
Less hands in the pot, so it will take less. You understand?
Yeah, that could be.
Condensing that.
Yeah,
Well, I
fewer
mean,
middlemen.
If the market's telling you it doesn't want it doesn't want it at some point. So you do have to make something that somebody wants to see. I mean, that's free market. I mean, so like, if a very small number of people want to see this thing and you want to go take $20 million and make it, well, the market's telling you that it doesn't need to be made at that scale, right? Maybe it needs to be made at a smaller scale or in a cheaper, more innovative way or something like that. But I mean, if you can make a super efficient system that has like microtransactions, you can theoretically like scale up how much you could reap out of the system itself, I would think. So what I'm saying is, I guess, is like if you had more of these like micro-style transactions, you should theoretically be able to get more revenue in the long
Yeah, middlemen always want to take a cut. So you do a peer-to-peer, you have some content contract that has terms of it for copyright terms, and people can transfer Nexus tokens into there. Then you allow all these things to happen. If it goes directly between you and the consumer, then you can cut all these other guys out, but really serve the purpose of forming those connections and connecting the consumer to the product. But making that direct connection removes a lot of those things, which actually.
But I'd be hesitant to dismiss middlemen too much. I mean, because they're lowering transaction costs. There's a reason why we have so many middlemen in a modern economy.
Well, yeah, and there's reasons that they exist for sure, and there's certain middleman functions that like basically put people in jobs that what I call drudgery. So like a good example on Wall Street is just like all these back office people, and they're doing these rote jobs that are just the same over and over and over again. And so if there's middlemen in the entertainment industry that have things like that going on, now somebody who adds value like a brilliant marketer or something, you know, like you can free these people up to like express themselves in different ways, not just in the sense of making movies or something. Like I express myself in the way of I geek out on finance. So there's all kinds of different people like that, and so if we can get rid of the drudgery, then everybody expresses themselves in a different way, and the system functions as efficiently as it can.
Let's talk here. Yeah, if you have something, yeah, Matt.
Yeah, I did have something kind of to add, because when we do talk about the arts, primarily if you think of film business, it's always a business. The same with music. I see a musician in the room as well. Several. And I do think that filmmakers or storytellers in general, whether you're an artist or not, you do need to know your audience. And I do feel like that's something that is lost on a lot of people. So I think if it does become more of a system where, yeah, if it's not your parents or somebody that you know really well that's worth losing $100, $10,000, $50,000, you do need to tell stories. No matter how eclectic it is or how emotional it might feel towards you, I think there is a universal way of telling a story, or it's to find a way. Like I just see what they're in the midst of creating. It doesn't take much. So it depends. If you want to make a $100 million movie, you do have a lot of work to do. It's the same thing as with builders or anything like that. So I do feel like in the same sense as investors, but I feel like those, let's say a Kickstarter, I don't want to keep reusing that, but if you demystify how much certain things cost, and those filmmakers need to know. And I think, when you think of, like, let's say luxury goods, when they build stores or build a luxury item, nobody really asks, what's the manufacturing cost of it, because it takes on a whole other level. But I think for film, for at least the people that are investing within it or purchasing it, there could be two that work together. At least the actual investors that are there in the beginning can get in for a certain amount, and like you said, is at least have a contract that they'll get something out of it. And that's what I feel is missing right now is, okay, I want to help Scott. I want to help all these people here on make this film, but I need to understand exactly financially what it's going to bring back. Well, yeah.
Transparency.
Yeah, the transparency is it. Because I'm from like the Canadian film business where I grew up as like an actor, and when you have the government funding, just like in Australia, where the government gives you $2-3 million to make a film or $5 million to make a film, and it makes $50,000 at the box office, and they're like, you're a success. To me, that model doesn't work. And I feel like for investors, even if you're paying $10, $15, and you're a couple million of you do want to get at least some return aside from the investment. So I feel like those two marriages could definitely work.
We're talking just to bring Lulu in. You're young. You just came into. You've been acting for what? How many years have you been acting?
Officially for a little over a year,
Okay.
but I've always been interested in it. I was born and raised in LA. I grew up kind of going to the big film sets, the studio movie sets, and then I started working actually at an independent production company, which is how Scott and I met, but I was working like behind the scenes. I was trying to figure out my passion, so I thought I would be better behind the screen. So yeah, I don't have a lot to add to the business conversation, obviously, but all I know is I've been around it my whole life, and
Well, just talk about that, because I think that's what's interesting as well. All of us, especially people that are in finance, film is very theoretical, you know, and
Yeah.
we see a movie and you don't think about how all the things that go into making a movie. Scott's been on it on top to bottom level. You're coming into from this, but you've obviously had this as your background. So when you're watching this, you're entering this system. So what we're talking about is how to decentralize the system. I think it's good to understand how big a system it is and how entrenched it is, how important it is.
oh yeah, I mean, it's amazing how much I've learned just in the past year. Things as simple as what goes into a movie being nominated for an Oscar. I thought it was something that just happened. Your whole life, you know, I grew up like watching, even though I grew up in LA, I didn't think that the Oscars were something so political, and like any awards show, any this, that, whatever, so much promotion and politics and everything goes into all this stuff. So, I mean, for me as like truly just starting, it's really cool to learn and to see how much things have changed, because when I started taking film really seriously is when things like Netflix started happening. So, I mean, I watched a lot of TV as a kid too, so, I mean, I'm just a fan of entertainment in general. Yeah.
But I bring Scott also talking about, so when Scott and I met, this is talking 2000, 2001, this was definitely a pivotal time in the entire film industry. I remember being in Los Angeles, and it's when digital film came out. And what you saw there, again, this idea of the studio system, the system that was at play, you had these film studios that, I mean, to go, and they're still there, obviously, but to do editing, to do film, to do all the things that were in place just to make a movie, it was a major system. But then we saw digital films and digital cameras, and it was amazing to watch how all of a sudden you would see all these filmmakers. It was, again, this release of energy. You saw all these filmmakers going out and filming their own projects. And Scott, more than myself, obviously I did that, but you really grew up in that, in the movie. I mean, you not only have you been in the bigger productions, but you've been at full bore doing it on your own. Yeah, can you talk about that? Just what you, I mean, you not only.
Yeah, like,
licensed to do
so,
that.
you know, this is the Young Hollywood panel. I'm here, I brought my friends. I'm involved in big studio films right now. I'm not necessarily interested in talking about that. Like, what I'm interested in talking about, what I think can change the world. What I think can change the world is passion. What I think can change the world is being connected with people, is collaboration, is good ideas always win, is, I don't think there's a huge problem with the studio system. Like, I work with the studios and I think they're good. But I think what change is inevitable. It's the only consistency in life. So what's amazing is what's happening in the crypto space. What's happening is I met a guy who started this, Colin, and I find him very interesting, and he's passionate, and that's what filmmakers are. That's what our tour filmmakers are. So that's what I'm interested in talking about, because I think that's what changes the world. The movie you're going to watch tonight, Mully, is a guy who wasn't interested in anything other than doing the next right thing, and that caused change in the world. That caused change in the world. So I'm not here to bitch and complain about the studio system at all, because I'm in it. But I am interested in changing people's mind states about where you can say, hey, what my story is, I built my own theater in Hollywood. I was up for a big film, and I didn't get the film, and I was crushed and depressed, and I went back to my room, and I said, screw Hollywood. And I was impassioned by Al Pacino in a movie called Looking for Richard, how all of his friends got together and built a theater. I did it 10 years ago, and I still own this theater. That was before I ever went and did Broadway plays in New York, and I ended up going to do that because I never gave up. And I always tried to be good to people, and I always worked as hard as I can. And I think that's what can change the world, and that's why the studio system does weed out people who can't take how hard life can be sometimes. You know, when you're on a film set in Kenya, I can tell you the movie you're going to watch tonight, we got surrounded by armed people in Kenya, and I had to, last night, we're making a movie here, and the police in Aspen came up to me, and we were filming at Snowmass Village, and I kept rolling, and they're in the movie y'all are gonna watch tomorrow now. Because nobody's gonna tell me that I can't do something if I believe in it. So I'm not trashing the studio system. It's a very good system, but it doesn't mean that things can change. It doesn't mean that we can all get together and do good new ideas and keep evolving. And that's what I stand by. And tonight's a good example of 4 years of me working my ass off with my friends and made a movie who, like Benjamin Wallfish, scored the movie you're going to watch tonight. Benjamin Wallfish also took this film on, and he scored It, which is now the highest-grossing horror film ever. And now he took this little documentary on, and then there's a guy named James Moll. He's sort of the foundation with Spielberg, and they're interested in making a difference in the world, and I think that's where we can all come together and be passionate and connected about. So the movie you're going to watch here tomorrow is a movie I made with my friends, that we want to entertain you guys and let people know that what life is about is how we can impact people. They say time is the currency of our life. We're here together. Well, hopefully we can connect on what we're passionate about, and that's where change can evolve and movements can start. I hope everybody learns from Molly, and we're like, how can we help out the hopeless girl who was just molested and mutilated by her drunken father who just murdered her mother, because that's what Charles Molly did, and now he's in the streets doing something. Steven Spielberg is a guy I've always looked up to and admired, and he wanted, DreamWorks is making a movie, Thank You for Your Service, to help our soldiers, and also entertain, and hopefully not lose money, because we do a good job at entertaining. And I think that's what's good about what I'm interested in doing.
It's hard for a fan. I agree with you, and I connect with you on every single level that you're talking about. But I want to be involved, and I too want to do good. So how do I do that? You know how hard it is to figure out what the hell projects you guys have going on. That's where.
What does that mean you're a fan and you want to be involved? Explain that.
So I want to be involved. Let's just say I want to give you money because I believe in your projects. And I just want to give you money. Maybe I'm not looking for something in return. Maybe I believe in the next project that you have. And I want to be involved in that in some way, shape, or form. Or maybe I do have contacts to help somebody who is, working on a low budget that does need help and get resources. And I think that part of this is what we're trying to do. And that's where I think the whole blockchain cryptocurrency, mentality is going to help you guys or people who need the help to get their voice out. Because for the voice that it took, for the career that you have now and the blood, sweat, and tears you put into it, there's another young kid out there that is trying to do that same thing. And he has access, or she has access to go out and do that, because there's a community of people outside of Hollywood that want to get involved. It makes everything rise to the top.
There's nothing more important than our arts. What's happening in our country is you go back and look what they did in the Great Depression. At that time, we funded the art system because we knew that is the best way to change the world is through the arts, and that system needs help. Is that we need to support our artists from an institutional level, from a university level, from a people level, from a friend level to a family level. We need to introduce the arts more into life and make it easier for you to get involved and fund Lulu's next movie she wants to star in if she doesn't know the right person with a lot of money. And that is the future, and I think that is a way where the society we need to head towards, because I think the arts can really, and Hollywood is in a sense the speaker box for the world, right? We can influence people through passion and through telling stories. Matt, do you want to say anything about this?
No, he was on a good roll. I was waiting for the mic drop part. No. I think a little bit to not even amplify what Scott said, because I don't think it needs any amplification, but I do know, even from having traveled a lot and working in film most of my life, most people that are not in film or in music or in the arts sometimes are very unsure of that world, which is the same thing, I think, from my perspective. If somebody starts talking to me about cryptocurrency, I'm like, I have no idea how to get involved. But I think it all reverts back to transparency. And I think from what little I started to learn about cryptocurrency when Scott was talking to me about, would you like to come to Aspen? was that we are leading towards a world that we need more transparency, especially when we see what the government is doing, not to pick sides or whatever, but I think it's highly important as people that vote, no matter what country that you're in, that the people that are elected, same thing as with filmmakers, you need to be accountable. And I think filmmakers as storytellers need to be accountable. You can have as much passion as all the people on this panel, and if you want to support them, they do need to put the work in. Scott's obviously risen way above every other person that I know. Some people do get lucky. Some people have talent and never push ahead because they don't want to. But I do feel that the transparency is the biggest ticket to knowing what your worth is, what Mully costs, what it will cost to get it out to people, to get people to go see it, and to tell that story. And the only way that it's going to happen is exactly what you just saw, is his passion. He's more passionate than 90% of the other filmmakers. And that's why he is where he is. And there's no secret. I knew it from the second that I met him. And he's putting together these festivals and starting to know, you know, through our extended group of friends. And that's where we all end up in this room as well. Each and every one of you is passionate in your own level and your own, but we do tell stories. The story of how you all came here is the same as our stories of trying to impact way more people, or just tell those stories. So I think if we can find a way to build a marriage between that, I think it's important, because I know from an entertainment legal background, is that so many investors have also been burned by filmmakers and even studios, and so I think transparency is probably one of the biggest things for people to let passionate filmmakers, and I think the more passionate you are and the more, if you have a platform where you can showcase that and be like, I started my own theater, I did this, I did that, and it's not necessarily just on Facebook or Twitter, but it's married within a group of investors that are there, because I know as filmmakers, all these various filmmakers are probably like, oh, I know a rich guy or a rich woman who has money, and we need $50,000 to get this. And then it creates an awkward pattern because you don't know whether they really want to invest. And then sometimes filmmakers aren't educated with the tools of, this is what it actually costs.
When you set out, let's say it's not necessarily like well, I know it's all a passion project, so my viewpoint is pretty limited. So if it's, let's say it's set out to be a commercial movie, it's, you know, like a box office kind of smash it. Do you put a project value on it to start, and then go out and say, okay, for your $50,000, you get this, and yours is different between every investor? How does that seems like a lot of negotiation. How does this movie structure work? That's got to be a very intricate entity.
Do a 2-second thing. Pass it on. I think it's films to a certain degree are definitely very ephemeral, just like with music or other arts, is you don't know what the result is. You can make a great film that just doesn't impact people.
But even the finances are.
So they are murky, and they've always been. You know, you can see even how an audience or critics can kill a film, like we just saw with Mother just recently. It got an F on a very popular platform, which obviously dips it down. There's a very brilliant filmmaker and supporting filmmakers behind that. Why is that failing? And that's not a small failure. It'll probably recoup its money anyway, and it's finding its audience. And I think everything eventually finds its audience. Like Fight Club wasn't popular when it first came out. It took VHS and DVD to catapult that film. So if the investors really believe in it, I think it is the filmmaker's duty to educate the investors on what they're buying into.
I think that I look at this like life, right? If you get married, if you get married in a relationship and you're like, and I think everything in the film industry or anything we do in life, it starts with the origin of inspiration and what the purpose behind it is. If I marry somebody and my intention is to have an affair and run around and then go crazy and do awful things, then that's probably what the situation is going to be. You marry somebody with a purpose, and like where I'm headed is the guy in Mully gave his financial interest back to the kids in Kenya. The movie you watched today, every dollar and every theater, that intention and that purpose and how he entered that arrangement was for good. The guy who bought the movie at the company for good is giving all of the proceeds back into the community for good. Going back to your question, if your intention is to make money, there's strategic models to obviously follow. You know, if you have right now I don't know, we know the actors who are international, like there's a lot of, there's different formulas that walk into that. But I think the purpose behind, say what the purpose of Nexus is, the purpose of Coca-Cola, the purpose of Universal Studios, the purpose of Matthew sitting down and making his documentary, that now amazing things are happening with his film that he put blood, sweat, and tears into. His purpose was to tell that story. So if the model is to make money, you'll see it every day. There are certain ways that, I don't want to bash anybody up here, but there's certain ways where you can watch movies and they make their $300 million in the box office and you have that 2-hour escape, and there's escapism commercial music. So it really matters what the DNA of the actual idea is. And that kind of is the forecast of how the whole thing will go. It always starts from the point of origin, you know? That's what I believe on that.
That's something, we just got 2 more minutes here, and we're going to wrap it up. Robert, do you want to say anything?
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a new startup called Motion Picture Exchange. It's the first decentralized platform for writers and filmmakers to basically create films and outside of the public domain through a decentralized platform, through the raising of financing for cryptocurrencies and tokens. And I just passed around some white papers. I do have some more, which actually has a business model for doing that. I completely agree with these gentlemen. I respect them. I think that passion is absolutely very key, but there are a lot of people that have passion that can't get in. And I also am not all that impressed with a lot of the things coming out of Hollywood lately. Now, I'm not talking about your film, that looks fabulous. And there are a lot of great films that still come out that have wonderful messages, but there is a ton of writers with wonderful, wonderful scripts out there that are just completely excluded. And I believe that there are gatekeepers and there are certain topics and contents in films that are excluded because they're too controversial or whatever the case may be. So, you know, censorship can come across in many forms. It can come across for economic reasons, it can come across for deliberate reasons, but we still have the same end result. So what we propose to do is to create a utility token and raise perhaps $50 million and use that utility token to then flow back into the system, allowing other writers to come in and then use a social platform, it's all in the business plan there, to allow writers to post their work and producers to come in and actors to come in, and they can actually, you know, select the scripts they like, and we can actually have a social media part of it where people vote on the scripts if the writer wants to post it and they like that particular script. They can have a rating system and whatnot. And the utility token can actually flow back into the system, creating new financing for other artists and other filmmakers. So it's really utilizing the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency tools to be able to create not low-budget films, but major motion pictures, because we really need to have, you know, great, great films. And so it's kind of a 1-2 punch. We actually have already a trilogy, a screenplay of 3 parts that is going to be, after our ICO, the first project to be financed and funded, and we'll have major name actors in that to be able to move forward from there.
You have a director already.
Well, actually, I need people. I've dabbled in the movie industry, so I understand some of the behind-the-scenes things, and I'm a writer. I've played a few, a couple of small roles and stuff, Mark and Charlie Sheen, and Jamie Foxx, and sets like that in Arizona. But it is really tough to get in. It's really, really tough to get in, and there's a ton of talent out there, and they're just as passionate, and they just need a place and a voice to be able to, to express their outlet. And when an artist can't do that, it really, really can just torment their soul. I mean, it really can have a hard effect on them. They're not made to go work at Starbucks or something. I mean, they want to express what they have inside. So this gives them that opportunity, and the utility token will allow that money to flow back into the system and refund other films. So we already have our first films. And let me tell you something. It's a knockout 1-2 punch, because this is the kind of stuff that cannot be funded by studios. I've never in a million years approved this kind of material. But it is very important because at the end of the day, we're all about freedom. We're about freeing humanity. And this basically allows, you know, because the whole world's addicted to entertainment. I love movies. I've loved them my whole life. And because the whole world is addicted to entertainment, this is our way in. But I can't do it with an audience of 20 people. You know, I mean, films have always, to me, been just an amazing, amazing medium because you can affect millions of people. And a really well-written and well-directed and well-acted movie, you know, you forget about time. You get transported into the film. You basically just lose complete track of time, and you start developing bonds with the characters, and it's just, to me, it's been you know, an amazing journey with film. So I really, really love films. I'm super passionate about it. And this is something that I do need actors. I do need people with directorial experience and whatnot. So we're planning on launching this token of the MPEX, with our ticker, Motion Picture Exchange, is our website. You can go there, read the white paper. And after our ICO, we'll immediately start in production on all 3 films to be filmed concurrent back to that. And actually, a big part of it is set in Prescott, Arizona. So I'm from Arizona, and Prescott just has it's got a unique character to it. Did you guys film on location?
No, but I've spent a lot of time in Prescott with the families.
Yeah. Anyway, it's got a lot of character there. So, and a lot of it's filmed on the Navajo reservation, and some of it in Phoenix and whatnot. But this is something that we hope to accomplish through the sales of MPEX tokens, and then use the money to be able to fund other artist projects.
We got to wrap it up. I think, and thank you for bringing that in, because bringing up how cryptocurrency can do this, and in your forum there, we're talking about how Nexus can do this. I think the thing that we're bringing in, again, passion. We got some great filmmakers up here. They're going to be doing the showcase tonight. They're all making, several shorts are going to be shown, and that's going from 5 to 7, the shorts. They'll be talking about their individual projects. Then they have a 7 to 9 tonight in Molly, which I think we're all real excited to see. And tomorrow night, same format. We've got 5 to 7, the short films. And then 7 o'clock, Matt's Highway of Tears, he's going to show and also talk about that. And we'll have music after each of those. Tonight we have Wall of Tom. Tomorrow night we have a Foster the People, or I should say Mark Foster and Isa Minnis from Foster the People. So we're really excited that they've come here today and been able to share this. And Robert, thank you for sitting in with us. And Robert, I mean, again, Tank Man, who doesn't want to see that?
I want to see it.
Everyone wants to see that. Thank you very much.